Professor Myers, you are here at the invitation of my Democratic colleagues, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. In his opening statement, my good friend Senator Whitehouse said, I want to quote, reproductive justice is economic justice, close quote. Do you agree with that?
I might, as an economist, use the word rights, but yeah, I do agree with that.
Okay. That's not true for the baby, is it?
Well, first of all, I would refer to a fetus, not
Yeah,
a baby.
but that's, well, a fetus. I refer to it as a baby. That's not true for the baby, is it?
The evidence that I presented to you, Senator Kennedy, was evidence about measurable effects on the lives of women, families,
Right, I
and
got
children
that
who were
part, but that's
born.
not true for the baby, is it?
I'm sorry, I don't really understand
Well, it's
the
not
question.
true. Let me be
Let
clear.
me
I'm
back
sorry.
up. As an economist, I measure effects using data. I'm not here to talk about ethics, assignment of personhood. That's not my
Well, but you said
role.
you agreed with the chairman's statement that reproductive justice is economic justice. There is no economic justice for the baby because the baby's dead, right?
I wouldn't refer. I don't really know how to answer your question. I would
You know,
I would refer to
was
a
the baby
fetus.
dead or alive?
We're referring to a fetus.
Okay, is the fetus dead or alive after an abortion?
The fetus would be dead after an
Okay,
abortion.
all right. If the mother is healthy and the baby is healthy, do you support abortion up to the moment of birth?
So I think that's a really hard question to answer because that just doesn't happen. You're asking me about something that simply doesn't happen.
Well,
I
it's
think-
legal.
I will tell you that
It's legal in Vermont, New Jersey, Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Alaska, and the District of Columbia, and the Loon wing of the Democratic Party supports abortion up to the moment of birth. So, do you support that or oppose it?
I don't think. Let me say, I'm here to talk about the economics of abortion.
No, you're here as an expert.
And
I'm just asking you
I
what
think you're
you
asking me a
believe.
question as a person, which I'll answer as a person.
Okay, tell me as a person.
I will tell you as a person that I have ambivalence about abortion. I will tell you as a person, I haven't personally had an abortion. And I will also tell you as a person looking at the evidence around me and understanding how complex the decisions are that people face.
Okay.
I'm just simply uncomfortable
I got to move on,
thinking that there's a
Professor, 'cause I don't
simple
think I don't think
answer
you're
that
going to
applies
answer
to
my
everyone.
question.
I trust women and their healthcare providers.
It's real simple. You either support abortion for a healthy mother and baby up to the moment of birth or you don't. And I don't think it's a difficult question. How about you, doctor? Do you support, if the mother is healthy and the baby's healthy, do you support abortion up to the moment of birth?
So, Senator, you're using really inflammatory language to talk about a medical procedure, and it's not a simple yes or no. Not to mention, when you make statements like that, you're erasing the grief and the trauma that my patients
You're not
are
going to answer my
through.
question either, are you?
It's not a question that
I
can
think
be answered
I think I
in
know
an
your
appropriate
answer.
way,
I think I
Senator.
know your answer. Mrs. Ford, okay? Let's take a baby at 21 weeks. Hold up, Mike. This is a baby at 21 weeks, okay? The baby can feel pain, right?
Yes,
And the baby's pretty developed, right?
yes.
And do you know the name of the procedure that the doctor would use to abort that baby at 21 weeks?
I'm not a doctor, but I believe it's a DNR,
It's called dilation and evacuation. Is that right?
as far as I understand, yes.
Yeah. And first, the doctor would dilate the cervix, and then the doctor would take what's called the doctor would call it a Sofer clamp. It's really a pair of pliers with sharp teeth on the end. And without giving the baby any pain medication, the doctor would go through the vagina, through the uterus, and start tearing the baby apart. Is that right?
As far as I understand the procedure.
Yeah, and she might start with the legs and pull them out, and the arms and pull them out, right? And then she might go for the heart or the spine and just pull the baby out piece by piece. Is that right? Without giving the baby pain medication.
That's what I understand the procedure to be.
Okay, but then you got to get the head out. The baby's dead, but maybe not. Maybe it's still in pain, but then you got to get the head out. And even with the cervix dilated, you got to get the head out, which is hard. So then the doctor would go in and use those pliers to crush the baby's head. Is that right?
As far as I understand.
And then she'd pull the head out, the crushed skull out, right?
Senator Kennedy, your time has expired here.
Well, you
and
gave
Senator
the
Stabenow is
others
waiting.
plenty of time, Mr. Chairman.
Just letting you know, your time's expired. You have
Okay.
other senators waiting.
Well, I was waiting when you were letting others. I'm sorry you don't want to hear about what happens.
No, I don't think anybody
in
else
an
is
actual
gonna- I don't think
abortion, but
anybody else
I
has gone
thought that
over.
was what we were here to talk about.
No one else has gone over.
Yes.
Some of the witnesses went a little bit long, but on both sides. So
I thought we were here
trying to
about
control that.
protecting mothers and killing babies.
I'm going to turn to Senator Stabenow and Mr.
Well, I'm sorry
Phillips.
you
I'm
don't
sorry
wanna
that
hear
this had to
Like
take
we've
place
got
in
a
front of
whole
you.
roster here.
My apologies.
I know it's ugly, but it's
Thank
the
you,
truth,
Mr. Chair.
At the outset, I feel the need to point out something that I think the casual observer might miss from some of the comments. The Dobbs decision did not criminalize abortion. The Dobbs decision didn't do anything to affect the legal status of abortion other than to return the decision, the primary decision on abortion, back to the states. It concluded that this has always been an issue that was before the states prior to Roe versus Wade and its progeny. The Supreme Court in Dobbs simply undid Roe and said this is a decision that most of the time, that is, unless we're dealing with something in the District of Columbia at a military installation using government funds or something like that, isn't normally going to be federal action. And so they returned it back to where it was. Now, states have been more or less out of this arena for about 50 years. They had been out of the arena for about 50 years, as most abortions occurring in America couldn't be meaningfully restricted in light of Roe versus Wade and its progeny. States are getting back in to that business now after it had been usurped by a judicial oligarchy of sorts for nearly half a century. And so, yes, states will handle this differently, but states handle many things differently. Everything from occupational licensing to what procedures might be performed in certain states, even the criminal laws of one state differ from those of another. Those laws are made by men and women elected by the citizens of those states. Sometimes those laws can end up having unforeseen consequences, sometimes tragic ones. Those laws can be changed from time to time. But it's important to focus on what this is about and what it is not. It is, at the end of the day, something that is in the hands of the American people. This is part of what having a democratically elected government means. It's what it focuses on. I've heard several mentions made to the idea that there's suddenly going to be a national abortion ban, a federal abortion ban enacted. To my knowledge, Republicans who now control the House haven't even pushed for a vote on that elsewhere. Same can't be true of the Born Alive Protection Act. It's a different circumstance. When a child is born alive, I would hope we could all agree, regardless of what your religious, moral, or policy feelings about abortion are, I would hope we could all agree that once a child is born, there are all kinds of protections and that allowing someone to be killed carries all kinds of other ramifications. Ms. Ford, I'd like to start with you. I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about the marriage penalties that exist in our current tax code and our social safety net at the federal level, and what harmful effects they might have on things like family formation. How do they harm, for example, married couples with children in a way that doesn't affect other families?
Yeah, I'd like to start by pointing out that marriage penalties in the safety net, which exist primarily in a program explicitly like the Earned Income Tax Credit, you can earn thousands more if you are unmarried and have children versus if you are married and have children. But they're also implicitly throughout the rest of our programs. For instance, If you don't declare the partner who you are not married to within the home, you can receive thousands more in SNAP benefits or TANF benefits or any other number of benefits. And the effect that we see that this has had on our culture is within the unmarried birth rate. We have the highest percentage of children living in single-parent homes in the world. It is about a quarter of U.S. children live in single-parent homes as compared to 7% around the world.
Are you suggesting we have thus incentivized out-of-wedlock birth and child-rearing?
The information seems to be falling that way because when we track CDC data, if you're looking at college-educated women, fewer than 10 or 11% have children out of wedlock. That's roughly similar to what was happening in the 1960s. When you're looking at less educated women, it comes close to 60%. It really does hit on education levels and income levels whether a child is going to be born out of wedlock. And we know very clearly from the data that there is an impact to having two parents in the home. This is why Melissa Kearney's recent book, The Two-Parent Privilege, was published. She is not right-leaning. This is following the data. There is a huge benefit to having two parents in the home with the child.
How does that contribute to the perpetuation or even exacerbation of existing inequities along racial, economic, and other demographic lines?
We know that if there is a single mom or a single parent who is raising her child alone, she is much more likely to experience economic hardship, and it is much more likely for her children to experience intergenerational poverty. The 60 years that Aid to Dependent Children with Families was run in this country showed that economic outcome. This program, which provided cash assistance to mothers, by the mid-1990s, 9 in 10 women were unemployed, 1 in 7 children were on the program, and after it was reformed to focus on work, the out-of-wedlock birth rate stabilized. Women returned to work by nearly 20 points, and child poverty in this country dropped by 60%.
Human beings are rational actors, and when we incentivize the wrong things, sometimes we'll get those things, and those things can sometimes harm a lot of people, especially the most vulnerable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.